Okay. You ready?
Okay, let's 3, 2, 1.
Go. All right.
Here we go.
All
Oh,
right.
shit. Hang on a minute.
Too late. Did you
It says
do it?
error opening recording device.
Oh, no.
Internal port, or can we stop?
Yes. We stopped.
What the fuck's that? Error code.
Let me pause this.
Okay.
All right. Lucy, you had a really big, exciting trip this week.
I did.
Oh my gosh. Your pictures
I
were
went to
amazing.
Edinburgh.
How'd I do? I've been working on it.
I know you have.
I'm trying to say it with a straight face. That's my goal. Edinburgh.
I actually think that possibly people from Edinburgh might say it different. I think it might be my Aberdeenshire accent. I think they might say Edinburgh.
I am so glad that you just said that. Can I just say, because I was listening to a podcast just this very morning, and the woman podcaster was Irish, and she was saying Edinburgh, like Edinburgh. So you always say like Edinburgh, and what I make fun of you because I'm like Edinburgh with my weird American accent, because Americans who are smart enough not to say Edinburgh still say Edinburgh, but there's like an extra syllable in there. And with her Irish accent, she was saying like Edinburgh, like Edinburgh. And I was like, oh, I could do that. That sounds less weird than me being like Edinburgh with my fake like rolled R, which is just stupid.
That is she's still Irish and not Scottish.
I know, but I felt like that was like a way that she was pronouncing it. It was a way that I felt like I could perhaps say without sounding like an asshole.
You could be a winner, not a failure.
I'm trying. Well, I don't want to sound, I don't know. I just
like
don't.
An idiot.
Yes.
But
exactly.
We sound like idiots every week. So.
I know. But why is it so hard to say? But yeah, I
don't know, but I watched quite a few YouTube videos this week while I was doing some research for this week's topic. And yeah, there was one American woman that just pronounced it so wrong. And the poor woman, every single comment in the comment section was like, to learn how to say the name of the place properly before you post a video.
Oh God, what way was she saying it?
The way that you do.
Oh shit. That's why I prefer my like fake Scottish accent version, because I know that it's wrong no matter what. But I felt like I could say like Edinburgh was like better than being like Edinburgh, which is like a full-on borough, which is not how it is. I know that. Yeah. It's just really difficult. And being like Edinburgh with my like fake stupid R's is stupid. That's a stupid way for an American to say it, because that's not how we talk. So I'm looking for the happy middle ground. It's very difficult, but I'm glad you were acknowledging that extra syllable, because when you're saying Edinburgh, you're skipping over that syllable at the end.
Possibly people from Edinburgh might have that extra little syllable in. Yeah. I'm not sure. I did notice in a couple of videos, but they might have also been super well pronouncing it and dumbing down their accents a little bit. But do you know what? Doesn't matter. Let's just say the city that shall not be named.
Okay. All right. I'm down with that. And I appreciate you like having such leniency towards my horrible accent.
The city that shall not be named makes it sound a little bit more Harry Potter.
It is very, very much more a Harry Potter, but that's actually not irrelevant, because Harry Potter was written there as well. So, hey.
Do you know one thing that I kind of knew this already, but I discovered it even more when I was on my Greyfriars Kirkyard ghost tour. That basically J.K. Rowling went around the Kirkyard.
Yeah. And took all the names.
All the names.
Yes. Do you know, as many times as I've visited the city that cannot be named, that I will never tire of touring it? Like those freaking tourist tours are the bomb. They're the bomb, because even though I do them every time as if I've never done them before, even though I've done them all before, I always pick up a new fun fact that I wasn't aware of, or the tour guide is, some of them have like a more historical bent. I actually went on a Harry Potter dedicated tour when I was there with my kids, thinking it would be more relevant to them. And it was like a completely different spin altogether. And then I've also done like a ghost tour, and I've also done a history tour, and they're all total different sides of that city. And everyone is equally as fascinating as the other.
I have to admit that is the first time ever that I've ever done any touristy tours.
They're so
say
good.
that with your Scottish accent. Touristy tours.
Touristy tours.
Because I've been to Edinburgh a lot. My brother went to university there. I used to go visit him for the weekend. Most of my visits to Edinburgh have involved drinking.
As you do.
Charity shops.
So good.
Vintage shops, which are always good in Edinburgh.
So good.
And pubs and more drinking.
Yes.
And being sick outside pubs. And
that's
peeing behind cars outside pubs.
Wait, what? I'm sorry. Did you just say peeing behind cars? You know what? Like, oh yeah, go ahead. I'll tell you later.
And I've never there's things in Edinburgh that I've never done. So this time round, I thought, I'm going to be a tourist.
Yes.
I'm going to go and do the touristy things. And it was so interesting.
Yes.
I went to the castle, which was cool. There was less to see than I thought that there would be, in that the castles that you get up in Aberdeenshire have lots of furniture and bedrooms and kitchens and great halls and all of that kind of thing. And the castle's more of the building and walking around, but it actually was really cool to go around that part of the castle. I'd never been all the way up to that part of the castle. There's a chapel in there that dates from like the 11th century or something.
Crazy.
And it's the oldest building in Edinburgh. And it's this tiny little stone chapel, and was one of the first things built when they built Edinburgh. And I didn't know that existed.
Super cool.
I climbed Arthur's seat, which is the sleeping dragon, which is in whatever episode that we did that one. I can't remember what it was.
Yep, me neither.
And that was amazing. The views were so good. You could see right out. You could see over to Fife. I bumped into these two little old men. I'm sure they don't listen to the podcast, so they wouldn't mind me calling them little old men.
Lucy, no one actually listens.
Well, I bumped into these two little old men from Fife. They were in their 70s, and everybody kept passing each other and joking about what a climb it was and how we were all out of breath. And they were like, "You're younger than us, you should be able to do it." And then we got to the top, and they pointed out to me where their houses were in Fife, and we had this big chat.
Oh my god!
And I nearly fell off because it was so friggin' windy. But I felt such a sense of achievement because it was so high. You felt like you were on top of the world.
Yeah.
Was a little bit disappointed there was no cafe there. I'm only joking.
I know. You know, first time I only climbed Arthur's Seat one time, and it was my very first visit ever to the city that shall not be named. That was my first visit ever. I was like 20. I was 20 years old, and that was my first introduction.
It was run up it at the age of 20.
It was not difficult. And my boyfriend was a super outdoorsman, whatever. I just followed him wherever he went. He climbed every mountain, but it was snowing because we went in March. And so it wasn't, but it was absolutely breathtaking. And that's when I fell in love with your country, by the way. That visit of just getting shit-faced in a shitty hostel with a bunch of people who were also getting shit-faced from around the world, and going in ghost tours at midnight. I felt completely under the spell. I mean, I actually have a whole YouTube video on like why, like my first visit there and what like sucked me in. I absolutely fell in love at that visit, and climbing just that the combination of the history and the raw, like the raw nature part of it too. It's like the whole thing just seemed so bold, like it's like this raw, like the history, and nothing is, so many cities like London has had such terrible fires, which like wiped out everything, and everything had to be rebuilt like recently. Like the city that cannot be named has like withstood, and everything that is there now is like original. Now things have been added on to that, but like so many, but like the old town has never had.
Well, wait until you hear what I have to say.
Sound. You just like whipped out your hairy
sound like a cow?
Wait, hold on.
That was my sound of disagreement. That was my sound of I'm not so sure that you're saying something that's correct.
All right. Well, don't tarnish my 20-year-old dream of your country. But I just the history is like seeping up through the streets into your pores. Like it's undeniable.
I spent quite a lot of time on the Royal Mile in the past. Yeah. Usually in pubs.
Yeah. As you do.
Sitting outside Deacon Brodie's tavern.
Yes.
Having had too many whiskeys. Blame my brother who led me astray in my teenage years.
Whatever. But, you loved it.
I hadn't actually walked from one side of the Royal Mile all the way down to the bottom. I'd never been down to the bottom.
That's shocking.
Of the Royal Mile.
Yeah.
I'd never been down as far as Holyrood Palace.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I didn't go around Holyrood because actually it was closed on the day that I was there.
I don't think it's ever really fully open. I've been many times.
But it was super cool to look at through the gates. And there were some buildings down there that were really old. There was a bathhouse or something.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
To Mary Queen of Scots.
Mm-hmm.
She'd used it as a bathhouse. It was almost on the edge of the grounds of Holyrood Palace, this cute little stone building.
Yes, and I know exactly what you're talking about. Mm-hmm.
And then what's amazing is that you're on this high street full of really crappy cashmere and tartan shops. I mean, you can't really go shopping there because it's all cheesy tourist stuff, but
excuse me, we cheesy tourists really enjoy those shops.
Really?
Thank you.
Like them?
We like to buy the coasters with the men in kilts with their bums exposed and the magnets of the kilt and bums. I'm just saying.
Do you have like a pen that if you turn it upside down, it exposes his bum? With
no, but they should have that pen. I would buy it. I love me a tourist shop. Thank you. I'm all about supporting the local economy with
I didn't go in any of the tourist shops.
Yeah, because you're not a true tourist.
I did find an amazing shop that was on the Royal Mile called the Weird Shop, spelled WYRD. It was the most fucking amazing shop ever. Oh my God. It was so good. It was a shop that was cool. It was this couple running it. I don't know if there were a couple, but there was a guy and a woman, and they were so interesting. I stood and spoke to them about fairies, folklore, and magic books for like half an hour.
Oh God.
And it was full of crystals and tarot card sets and books on folklore and fairies and magic and all that kind of stuff.
So jealous. How did you not buy everything in there? Like how did you what did you buy? I need to know.
I bought 2 books.
Okay.
I bought one book by Robert Hutton, who is the guy who wrote the Witch Book, and then this one is
this Witch Book right next to me.
So amazing. It's the same guy, but this one is about I can't remember the name of it, but it's about modern witchcraft practices, and it looks super interesting. Cool. And then I bought another book called The Cunning Folk, which is actually not a book, it is a zine.
Oh, right.
Do you remember in the 90s when you were at college?
Yeah.
You would get these hand printed zines that your friends would put together with like their poetry and writing, and they'd like get them all printed up and staple them and sell them for 25 cents or whatever. This is like a modern version, so it's like a quarterly magazine, but it's published into a book, and it's full of writing by local people all about folklore and all of that kind of
Awesomeness.
stuff. And
Now,
I just thought, I have to buy that. Looks so interesting.
was it
So I'm
so
gonna
good?
read it and then send it to you. So
Can you? Oh, I would love that. Is that something you can subscribe to so you get it actually delivered in the mail?
I should check it out.
It might have a little pamphlet inside where you can, because I would definitely be interested to learning more about that.
Yeah.
That is really cool. That's really, really cool. I'm trying not to be insanely jealous, but it's not working very well. I'm just glad that I could take our kids there. Like, I'm so glad that they got to come with us to do that.
Yeah.
So I feel like I got to share it out.
Because it's such an amazing city with all the little closes and all these little windy streets. I also went to visit the little close where they filmed the print shop scene from Outlander. I had to do it. See that. I was being a total tourist.
But you know what though? It's really important. I feel like locals who, because of course you never do any of that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. You're like, oh, poo-poo, that you're missing out on like the good stuff. You really do. Yeah. I think it's like important that everyone in their own city, no matter where you live in the world, you go be a tourist for the day, because you will be shocked at what you learn. And you also then stop taking for granted all of the cool stuff that's right at your front door. Yeah. You literally have no idea.
It also made me feel like I was on holiday after 2 years of not going anywhere. It was like, well, I can't go on holiday. People are going on holiday abroad, but I don't really feel like doing that right now. And so I'm going to go on holiday in my own country and actually do like touristy things.
Yeah, and it's fun. It's really fun.
Behave like I'm a tourist a little bit and actually visit all this cool stuff. But
I think that's awesome.
The best part
was
definitely doing the haunted vaults and graveyard tour, which is what we're speaking about this
week. Yay! I'm very excited.
Apparently you can actually go and do whole night ones.
No, that's not happening.
I think if you do that, then you're absolutely freaking crazy, because I was inside that vault for maybe 40 minutes and I was ready to get out by the end of it. I was like, this is too claustrophobic and dark and horrible and damp, and I feel like there's someone behind me at all times ready to tug on my coat, and I can't imagine spending the whole night in there.
No. There is no way. There's no way. I did like the midnight tour on my first visit back a million years ago, 25 years ago. That it scared the shit out of me. It scared the shit out of me.
Not long after they were opened.
It was, what year was that? I went to college from 94 to 97. Graduated early. Thank you. Because I was a super nerd. And I went to University College London for a semester abroad. And then it was during my like spring break that we snuck up to your city that cannot be named. Yeah. So what year was that? Like 96, I guess.
You were in Edinburgh.
Yes.
The same year that I was in Oberlin.
Shut up. Oh, that's so weird. That's so weird. We were like exchange students with each other. But Scotland was 100 million times cooler and nicer than my experience in London. Sorry for my London listeners. Are like 0 London listeners. Really, we really have nothing to worry about. People were there. They were so, I don't know. It was like another part that made me fall in love was just like that animosity towards Americans, which is not unjustified. I totally get it, but just goes away as soon as you go into Scotland. People don't give a shit where you're from. They're like, hey, just have a drink with, like, come and have a pint. They don't care. All of that stuff goes away once you cross the border. It's actually really amazing. It's one of another reason why I love your country.
We're the best.
You know what's right next to me?
Your map?
My map. And
Woo!
I don't actually want to hang it up because then it's like too far away from me. So
Can
I
you
just
point to the city that
cannot
be named?
It's,
Can you find it?
well, you know what makes me mad is they chopped
Oh my
off.
God, Karen can't find it.
I can because Inverness is like up here, but this is also a vintage map.
What she's doing is she's stalling. She's stalling. She's taking her time. She's stalling
It's
till she can
right
find it.
here. But I know Inverness is here. But look at, they chopped off the Outer Hebrides. Look at, totally chopped off. And by the way, this thing cost me a fucking fortune on Amazon. You know what this is? This is like a shitty poster and it's put in a shitty frame. Like I could literally just buy this frame at like my local craft store. It's like a plastic and it's like a stupid I got super scammed, but I love it so much and I don't want to hang it up because I can't grab it and like go find where everything is located. So I just keep it next to me like a weirdo. But anyways, okay, I'm sorry I interrupted you. I was just molesting my map right to my right hand side as I keep it like a nerd on the floor. But anyways, tell me about the ghost tour. I want to know all the details.
Okay, well, I'm not going to talk about, I'll talk about what we did briefly, but I actually then came home and did a bunch of research and found out a whole bunch more stuff, which is super interesting. So it's going to be a general talk about the vaults in Edinburgh with a little bit of personal information and experience added on.
Awesome.
Because we actually did a tour that was Greyfriars Kirkyard, which I think could be a whole episode in itself. There's some super cool stuff about that.
Yeah, there is.
Super cool history and ghost stories. And then we went to the vaults and we spent some time in the vaults, and it was spooky and dark and damp and claustrophobic. And as soon as someone tells me, oh, now you might feel a little bit claustrophobic going in here, if you start to feel like you're having a panic attack, you can't really leave that easily. So you'll just have to like shout out, help, get me out of here. Then that instantly makes me feel like I'm gonna have a panic attack.
Right, like should I be having, why am I having a panic attack right now? Yes.
But Karen,
yes,
be prepared, because I did some research today that had me shooketh.
Shooketh, like old English? Shook? Oh shit.
Shooketh. I actually don't know if I'm going to be able to sleep tonight.
Oh,
and the funny thing is that you know how we always find a funny, or we think it's funny, but maybe nobody else thinks it's funny, a funny angle on something. The thing that I found, and I know I'm giving you real teasers and I'm not giving any of away at the moment. The thing that I found came from the most unexpected source ever.
What? Oh boy.
Just you wait. You wait.
All right.
So I'm going to talk about the history of the vaults first, because it's super interesting.
Yeah.
And then we're going to go into the ghosty stuff. So I always thought that the vaults were a hidden city underground, but they're actually not. They're not a hidden city underground. I always thought they were a little bit like the catacombs in Paris, for example, where it's all built, or like the underground in London, where it's all built underground. But actually, Edinburgh is such a hilly city. Like, it's built on a whole heap of hills. So Edinburgh Castle's built on a hill. It's called Castle Rock, just like Game of Thrones. I keep wanting to call it Castle Rock, like Game of Thrones. It's not Castle Rock. And then there's Arthur's Seat, which is another one. And there's a whole heap of hills. And Edinburgh is not flat. You Americans with your grid pattern cities.
Okay, excuse, I'm from Boston. There is no grids in Boston, I can assure you.
Well, you know, Manhattan,
a nice try.
Every other city that's got grids.
Lesser cities, yes.
it's not like that in Edinburgh, because everything's like up and down and up and down.
Yeah.
And Edinburgh was built on all these like hills and valleys and hills and valleys. And in fact, I think where Princess Street Gardens is now used to be a big swampy loch that got drained. And so there was the castle and the Royal Mile and all these tiny little windy streets off it that went up and down hills. But in the 1700s, because of the Highland clearances mostly, and also the famine in Ireland, lots of people moved to Edinburgh seeking fame and fortune. Maybe not fame and fortune, but they felt like they needed to get a better life and survive and get some work. And so the population of Edinburgh grew a huge amount in a very small number of years, and the city couldn't cope really. So they decided to build some bridges that went over where these valleys were, so it was easier for the city to expand, so that people didn't have to go up and down all the time. I don't know why that would be a hassle, but I guess it is. It's not if you live in San Francisco, but anyway.
No. Yeah.
So they built the North Bridge first, and it's really hard to do it without visuals, but the North Bridge is a big bridge that goes from the Royal Mile, and it goes to the north of the city, and the north of the city is where the new part of the city was built, and obviously the slightly wealthier residents lived there, and it is where Waverley Station is now. So they drained Princess Street Gardens and they made it into the gardens, and they put Waverley Station and the north part of the city, and they put a bridge so that people wouldn't have to climb down this steep incline from the Royal Mile and go up again. And then they decided to do the same thing with another bridge that went from the Royal Mile south, and that one's called South Bridge. So up until then, there'd been all these tiny little windy closes that went down steep hills. When they built the South Bridge, so they passed this act in 1785 for building the South Bridge, and then the bridge was completed in 1788. So it took them 3 years to build. And at the time, they had the great idea that what they would do is, instead of just building a bridge, they would actually build the bridge, and then all the arches of the bridge they would fill in so that it would be usable space. And so it was filled in and created into these vaults. So it's actually above ground level, but it feels like it isn't, because there are houses above it. So they built new streets on the bridge and put houses above. If you're watching on YouTube, see my hands waving all over the place.
Yes, it's all right.
And then underneath, in the arches of the bridge, they built these vaults. And at the time, they thought it was this great idea that they could make these like 1700s version of posh shopping malls and have all these businesses move in. So they had all these businesses moving in. They had cobblers and pubs and taverns and all these kinds of things.
It is it's very sophisticated if you think about it,
for the
right?
time, yeah,
for sure.
I guess it's a little bit like, in Florence, which if you're actually from Italy, you should call Firenze, not Florence. So we're even worse than Americans calling Edinburgh Edinburgh,
it's really
because
so
we
bad.
call it a whole other name that isn't even the name.
Yes.
But the bridge in Florence was a bridge with buildings on it, with shops, and so this is kind of the same thing. The bridge had buildings on it,
right?
But it also had stuff built down underneath as well,
right?
And yeah, I guess it was quite sophisticated until you know what it ended up like, because then it was far from sophisticated.
Yes.
So there are actually two main streets next to the bridge that have these vaults. One is called Nidri Street and the other one is called Blair Street, and they're the ones either side of the bridge. And all these businesses moved into the vaults, but they really quickly realized this wasn't a good idea. The vaults kept getting flooded. They were super damp. They were like disgusting. And so all the businesses moved out. Now, I'm going to interrupt myself because I forgot to tell you something. As they were building the bridge, they decided that they were going to have a ceremony for opening the bridge that was like a good luck charm, and they thought that the good luck charm would be to get the oldest resident of Edinburgh to cross the bridge and be the person to open the bridge. But this person died a week before the bridge was open.
Not a good omen.
Not a good omen.
Not.
But this is the thing I don't get. Instead of saying, well, like, so she's no longer our oldest resident, Mrs. Cameron over here is our second oldest resident, and so because that woman's dead, she's now our oldest resident. We'll get her to cross the bridge.
Yeah,
they didn't do that. That would be far too much like common sense. They actually took the person who died and they put her in a coffin, and they carted her over the bridge to open the bridge.
Oh,
hence
like we are not flexible. This plan is still going. We are just going as forward as planned.
She's died. She's gonna
dead, alive. Yeah, we said we would do it, and we're doing it.
And meanwhile, Mrs. Cameron, who's like 85 and like hanging on, is like, hang on a minute, I thought my time had come.
Yeah, you could have done that.
It was my time to shine now. Why did I not get to step in and take part? So they think that actually that cursed the whole area.
Oh, Jesus, totally did.
Which it totally did.
Yeah, it did.
Wait and hear to find out what's happened.
Yeah, spoiler alert. Curse
in the last few hundred years in the Edinburgh Vaults. It's not a place that you want to hang out in.
No, it's really not.
So there are about 120 vaults in these two streets under the bridge. And
that's a lot.
It's a lot.
I know. I just have to ask a really quick question, because when I've done the underground tours, I don't think we were in the vaults. We were just in the lower, like, tenement areas of the buildings on top, like along the Royal Mile. The buildings went down as much as they went up. Are the vaults different than the tenements that were built under the existing buildings that are on the Royal Mile?
Yeah, they're like caves. If you look at my photo, this is a vault.
But I've done tours
of them
both.
Probably some of them actually still house bars and clubs.
Okay. Maybe I wasn't in the vault tour, because Lord knows I do every.
Did you go to Mary King's Close?
I've done every. I am all about a tour. FYI, I will do any and every tour available. Tourists, not tourists, drinking, daytime, nighttime, for children, for adults.
Such an American thing.
No, because I'm such a nerd and I want like all the facts. Like I want everyone's variation. I want, you know what I mean? Like I love the history. I love the fantasy. Like I love it all. So I want all the information. But I've been in that
a magic wand. I don't know where you were.
Well, but I'm just saying
in the vaults.
But aren't there vaults? But aren't there also? They also there, because like Mary King's Close, which I did with my kids, but I've also done tours other than that as well. But those were, I don't think those were the vaults. That's just right down under the Royal Mile. Are those also the vaults?
Yeah, I think there's tenement flats under the Royal Mile as well. But I might be wrong. But I think Mary King's Close was a street.
Right.
That was, so if you imagine the Royal Mile is at the top of a hill.
And if anybody doesn't know, let's explain
from it.
Let's explain what the Royal Mile is also for
So
people that are listening.
Okay.
Yes.
The Royal Mile is exactly a mile long. It's not actually called the Royal Mile. It's got another official street name. I can't remember what it is.
But everybody knows of it as the Royal Mile. And it goes from the castle.
End is Edinburgh Castle.
Right.
At the top. And then at the other end is Holyrood Palace.
Right.
At the other end. And so it's basically the street that goes between Edinburgh Castle and Holyrood Palace. And it's basically the oldest part of Edinburgh. It's where Edinburgh started off. And it's on the top of a hill. It's like on a ridge. So coming down from it are streets. So there would be buildings that would be below the street level of the Royal Mile, but it's because they're on like a steep street. And in a way, the vaults are the same as that.
I know. Right.
Built to be, they look like underground caves, but they're actually not underground.
Right.
They're part of the bridge that was built to make other streets from the Royal Mile on a level with the Royal Mile so that they're not all going down and up, because that was too much for people to go up and down all the time.
I mean, it was, and another thing I need to clarify, especially for American listeners, because this is new to them, which is what a close is. So when you're walking down or up the Royal Mile, depending on which direction you're going, there's all these, and also a really important thing to know if you've never been there is that a large portion of the Royal Mile is also closed off to vehicular traffic. So it's a pedestrian walkway, which is amazing because you can walk freely, and there's vendors set up, and there's bagpipes piping, and you can walk around without having to worry about cars. And it's a great feel to the city, but because it's on just you can get around on foot, pretty much the whole mile without worrying about that, and safely. And a close, just for those who don't know, because that's not something I don't know where that term originates from, but if you're walking down or up the Royal Mile and you're looking off to your right and left, there are these little teeny tiny sketchy ass tiny
like if you were in
almost like a hallway
cities in America, you would not walk down those because they don't expect that someone might have it done.
They don't exist in America, which is why I'm bringing it up. So when we say the word close, it's like a outside hallway kind of between two very close buildings typically. So there's
a little alleyway.
Yeah, it's a little tiny alleyway. Thank you. Most of them are characterized by little like archway, like almost like a little hobbit. They're like the scariest things in the world when it's like midnight and you're like, you couldn't pay me $1 million to walk down that close. And it's like this little sketchy teeny weeny space between two very ancient buildings. And a lot of times when we walk down into a close, it will actually, like, for example, you can like look up and, the buildings are quite tall on either side. It might make way to a courtyard. It might make way to,
Well, actually, what it does sometimes is
alley is what it is.
For example, off the Royal Mile, there's a street called Coburn Street, which curves round and takes you down towards the train station. And the bottom of Coburn Street it's almost like a building's height below the top of Coburn Street. It's a really, really steep street because Royal Mile goes down these steep places. But there's actually some of the closes on the Royal Mile where you walk through and it takes you out onto Coburn Street, but further down Coburn Street. So it kind of saves you having to walk all the way around, and you're cutting through as it was.
I know. So, some of those closes are really freaky.
Yeah.
They're really
freaky. The Outlander filming print shop is a close. It's Bakehouse Close. It's a little close.
I know that. See, I didn't know that.
Off the Royal Mile. Yeah.
Cool. So I just had to say what that was, because when you're and they're named that, you know, but you're like, what is a close? What is this close? What the fuck is that? Like, what is that? But it's like a little tiny, literally physically tiny little alleyway.
Yeah. If you're
between two buildings, typically.
If you're not from Scotland or the UK and you've not been to Edinburgh, just Google some of these streets, because then it'll give you a little bit more of a visual of what they look like, because it is a little bit hard to visualize, especially with me just waving my arms.
Well, they also I don't know this is even a thing, and I've never been to any other part of the world, and I've traveled around the world. I don't know of any other closes anywhere.
I would disagree, because I've been to Granada in Spain, and there's a whole section of Granada that doesn't have full wide streets that you can take cars down, and it's full of these tiny little closes that just intersect.
Yeah, and that was I didn't mean to say that because I haven't seen them. They don't exist. I'm just saying I think it's just I don't know. It's hard to relate to them. Yeah, unless you've seen them somewhere, because they're so.
I think it's basically born of a city that was built before there were cars or carts, horses and carts, maybe even.
Because they're really tiny little pedestrian walkways. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, which is probably why the Albaicín in Granada is like that, because that part is the oldest part. So you can't really take a car around it.
Yeah.
Only a couple of streets that are wide enough for cars, and the rest of them are just these tiny little streets that are just wide enough for pedestrians.
I know. And half of me feels silly for emphasizing that so much, but but on the other hand, it's like, in order to understand kind of the atmosphere of these places, it is as like freaky. It is like, if it's nighttime, I mean, you look in there and you're like, there is no way in hell I'm going in there right now. Like, they're scary.
And that's with electric lights.
Yeah, I was just gonna say
what it was like in the 1700s.
No, it's
with no street lamps.
Terrifying. No way.
Absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. So I just had to kind of help set the scene for that, because it's hard to imagine kind of like how scary these are on a good day with a crowd of drunken friends, right? Like, I still wouldn't even go down these places if I was, and it's a very kind of safe place. But anyways, keep going. I love this. All of this is just awesome.
I actually love looking at maps and photos of these kinds of places and just following where they would be and what they would look like, and trying to imagine what they would be like in the 1700s and the 1800s.
But there is something, I think maybe because and I think maybe because because that part of the city too is blocked off from cars, it's easier for your imagination to go there. Do you know what I'm saying? Because you don't hear the cars aren't flying by, and like, you're already kind of on foot, and it's easier to kind of get carried away. I don't know. The history of that whole setting is just, you can like feel it. You can just feel it. You know?
Yeah, apparently, while I was doing my Googling, there is a part of Edinburgh up in that area. I think it's maybe around the Kirk area. I'm not sure. I need to Google more and have a look and find some photos where, in part of that street or that building, there is actually evidence of earlier buildings from the 1500s that were built on top of to make the newer buildings, because a lot of the buildings that are there now are actually ones from the 1700s and the 1800s, which in Scottish relative times isn't actually that old. If you think about it, there are probably parts of Edinburgh that were around in the 1400s and the 1500s, and even earlier than that. If St. Margaret's Chapel, or whatever she's called, was from the 11th century, there's a whole heap of stuff that we just don't even see that has been demolished or built on top, and I find that bit absolutely fascinating.
I think it's incredible. And how weird is it to think that nothing is as old as that anywhere in the Americas. Obviously, not including things that were built by like the indigenous people. But I mean, that's the thing, is that even the quote unquote new parts of Old Town are older. A lot of them are older than anything you find in our entire continent.
Yeah.
That's like mind blowing.
I know. Although when I went to Boston, I did find it absolutely fascinating that there were gravestones from the 1600s.
Yeah. Well, I know in my personal family, we have been here since the very first people who have been here since the early 1600s.
Oh,
like
really?
forever. Mm-hmm. Since like day one. I know.
Wow.
But then you go to Scotland and then you're like 1600s is nothing. That's like child's play. And like all the castles are from the 1100s. Like it's so fascinating. It's just so fascinating. It knocks your whole in Americans whole perception of what is old. Just, it's like laughable. Like what you think is old is nothing. That's like child's play. That's like
you American children.
That's like the teenage years of Scotland, right? Like, it's just fascinating. It's really fascinating to me.
Yeah.
I love it all. Yeah. But you can just feel the layers and the ancient part of it. It's just blows you away. But I do stand with my earlier sentiments about how, like the London fire, like so much was destroyed in the London fire, and London was rebuilt in like the 1800s. So you don't get that old seeping history feeling in London the way that you do in Edinburgh, because things are 200 years newer. And that's at the oldest part for huge swaths of London. Do you know what I mean? Like that explains though the difference between the cities and why one feels ancient, because it really is. Like Edinburgh didn't have the fires that London, Chicago, and some of the old. It really didn't. I'm not listening to you. Don't know.
Can I tell you something that's going to burst your bubble?
Don't burst my bubble. I love my bubbles literally so much. Don't even tell me.
Edinburgh had a fire in 1824 that lasted for...
No, they didn't.
4 years.
What? In Old Town?
Yeah.
Wait. No, seriously. You're literally bursting my bubble right now.
Did
you destroy everything on the Royal Mile?
I don't know, but...
I'm Googling that shit right now because you are literally going to make me
not 4
cry.
years, 4 days. Sorry.
Lucy.
4 days.
Is nothing.
4 days.
Okay, actually, that's actually a really long time. All right, I need to fire. You can't just tell me that. When?
It lasted for 4 days, and it was called the Great Fire of Edinburgh, and it was in 1824.
How much did it destroy? This is news to me. And I've also told everyone that
my research that included that was only in relation to horrible things to do with the vaults, which I'll tell you in a minute. So I don't know about the destroying of the city.
All right. I have to really quick go on Wikipedia and look at this, because this goes against all the things I've ever... Yeah, it started in November of 1824 and lasted for 5 days. No total damage.
I'm sorry.
Oh, well, it was only destroyed four tenements.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's a little bit different than the Great Fire of London.
Yeah. Well, it has different closes.
You can live in your little Edinburgh.
I need my Edinburgh dream. That's like why I'm obsessed with, like, it all stemmed from my first visit there. You can't just come along and be like, just know everything you believe and know of. The reason that you have annual retreats and this entire podcast is now burned to the ground.
Decide that you're not going to ever speak to me again because I burst your bubble.
Okay, they did say 400 homes were destroyed. That's a lot of homes. Oh,
I know, but don't read any further because you're going to spoiler yourself for all the gory, ghastly nastiness I'm going to tell you.
All right, I'm just really sad right now.
Okay, just imagine that I didn't say it.
Okay.
Just pretend yourself that I didn't say it.
Okay.
It's okay.
Pretending. Okay.
It
Okay, go.
didn't destroy the castle or the closes.
Okay.
So there you go.
Okay.
You're still safe.
Thank you, Lucy.
Your Edinburgh dream.
I know, I do. I don't know why I'm obsessed, but I am. It's like a part of me.
I
Don't
know.
take it
I
away,
think.
Lucy.
Well, I think you probably maybe you had a past life there. The tour guide that was in our vaults tour said that she had like past life readings, and she got told that she'd lived in Edinburgh in a past life, and she actually wasn't from the UK. I'm not sure where she was from. She had a really cool accent, but I'm not sure exactly what country she was from. But I said I'm sure that's why she was like working there now. She was like almost condemned through time to keep returning back.
Oh, that's fascinating. I know. I don't know why I'm obsessed. I am like obsessed with your country. It's a little creepy.
I know. I'm a bit weirded out. I think I might have to run away from you.
Oh, no, don't do it. Did I
or
tell you
either
how?
that or like that's the only reason you're friends with me is because I'm Scottish. What if I wasn't Scottish? Would you not be friends with me anymore?
I would totally be friends with you. And as long as you would still wanted to come hang out with me and still talk about Scotland. I mean, your nationality itself doesn't.
There's conditions. There's conditions to it.
I just mean, as long as we still have the same things in common, it wouldn't matter if you were Scottish or not. I'm just like that. I'm sure there's a lot of Scots who don't give a shit about Scotland and don't want to talk about it ever. So I'm just happy that you do. I'm looking around my room because did I tell you about that rock? When I was at Pennon, we were at Pennon, that beautiful, beautiful town. I picked up a rock on the beach there and I brought it up. Did I tell you this? And Maggie, my dog Maggie's obsessed with playing with it. She turns into a cat when she chases this. It's a rock. Okay. She's obsessed.
She doesn't swallow it
with
because
this
that would
rock.
be one painful excretion.
But Lucy, she plays with it all the time. And I keep posting pictures on Instagram because she like cat and plays with it like it's a mouse. It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. And I have to be like,
Maggie's secretly Scottish as well.
I know, it makes me think. I'm like, why is she obsessed with Scotland?
Because she's your dog. That's why.
It's just so weird. So weird. But she always plays with it in this room. And I'm like, why are you obsessed as much as I am? My dog friend.
That's because she's obsessed.
She knows. But yeah, don't burst
she
my
knows,
bubble.
She knows that there was no fire that destroyed the whole of Edinburgh.
Don't say that.
Right, I'm going to carry on with the vaults.
Please, I'm sorry.
And I've lost my place, but
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
That's fine. So, blah 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 blah.
I'm sorry.
Okay. So where they built the vaults was actually in this valley that was called the Cowgate, which leads down to the Grass Market. It's a really beautiful part of Edinburgh. Well, we think it's beautiful now, but actually at the time it had quite a dark association. It had been associated with the plague. It had been associated with the witchcraft trials.
There's a lot of shit that goes down in that city.
Yeah. So all these businesses moved into the vaults and only stayed a short while. I read in one source that they only stayed for 3 years. And then I read in another source that it was 30 years. So make of that what you will. You can choose one of the two. It actually doesn't really matter because we're not really about getting our facts totally straight.
Not really into that.
We don't really care too much. So the businesses stayed a little while. Let's say that. That's all we need to know. And then they decided that where the vaults were too disgusting, so they moved out. And then when they moved out, because Edinburgh was growing so much, and there was all these people moving in, there were all these people that decided that they were going to move in to these empty rooms and squat them. And so the vaults were filled up with all like the dregs of society, basically. So they became slums. There were all the poor people, criminals, there were the illegal alcohol makers, illegal whiskey distilleries, body snatchers, which is that whole Burke and Hare thing, which is probably another whole episode that we should do.
At least one, yeah.
It became a red light district, so all these prostitutes moved in, and basically all these families and prostitutes and criminals moved into the vaults, which were, I mean, I went in there, it was gross. There was like water dripping from the ceilings, and the ceilings had all this disgusting stuff hanging down from it that I don't know whether it was like moss or cobwebs or
that's not
or good. Like I don't want to think too much about the stuff that was dripping off the ceilings. Our tour guide did say you wouldn't want to be somebody who sleeps with their mouth open in the vault, because you don't know what would end up in your mouth because of all the crap that falls off the ceiling.
Not to mention the Gardy Lou and everybody like
I know. Let's explain what does everybody know what Gardy Lou is? Let's explain. That was one of the first things that we did in history in school when we learned about Edinburgh. When we did Edinburgh in school, we learned all about how Edinburgh improved from the slum to the new town. And Gardy Lou is basically the thing that people shout when they want to throw their toilet mess out of the window to the street below, because they didn't have any sanitation. Edinburgh was pretty disgusting at that time. And so they just opened the window and then threw their chamber pots out the window and shouted Gardy Lou, so that if you were walking in the street, you would hopefully miss from it landing on your head. Very disgusting. So in the vaults, there was obviously no windows. Karen just held up a sign and I okay. Let's pause.
Okay.
So basically all these people moved in to these, like they're not underground, but they're underground caverns with no windows. They're super damp. There are no toilets, no sanitation, no clean air. The air is like all dark and dank and disgusting, and also super overcrowded. So like more people than there needs to be. And then also, if you think about it, there's quite a lot of criminal element in there. So you might have families sharing a vault with these criminals, and you don't know whether you're even safe to go to sleep. I mean, it must have just been absolutely disgusting.
I can't even
I always
imagine.
think when I think about these times, I always think, people nowadays moan that they don't have this and this and this in their house, or like their kitchen's 5 years old, or all of this kind of shit.
First world problems is what we like to call that.
First world problems.
So
like
true.
Try sleeping in a stinky,
seriously,
a stinky cave, basically. That's what they were. Stinky cave with water dripping, rats in the corner, candle lit. That's all.
And it's even more than that, right? Because there's also like lice and like mortality rates, and there's no birth control, so everyone has like a million babies, and then half the babies all die, and like it's worse than anything we could ever even wrap our brains around.
Like all you people that moaned about lockdown, like
I know,
you were in your comfy house with Netflix and like Deliveroo.
I know. And like Amazon, bringing you to your doorstep, like every wish and want you've ever had. It's ridiculous. I know. Thank you for that.
So sorry to mention the fire again.
Yeah, stop mentioning that fire. gonna drink out of
But
my whiskey.
on top of all of that, there was the fire in 1824 that lasted for 4 days. And a lot of the people in Edinburgh thought, we can go into the vaults, they'll be safe. But actually they weren't, because they acted like big bread ovens.
Yeah. Oh God, I was just gonna say there's no windows, so they just cook.
So people just cooked. Apparently it would fill with smoke, and then it would get as hot as 400 degrees centigrade, which I dread to think is what that is in Fahrenheit.
I don't even know.
And so apparently some parents slit their kids' throats.
Shut up.
Because
no way.
they knew that they were going to die and they wanted them to have a quick death rather than asphyxiating.
Oh my freaking God. I can't even, I cannot.
I know.
That is beyond horrific.
So do you think these places are haunted?
Do you like know? Oh my God, I can't get over that last part.
Do you think they might be haunted just a little bit?
That's horrific.
They're just a little bit haunted. So people lived in the vaults until the 1860s.
That's like recent history.
Nearly 100 years.
Yeah, that's like my great grandmother, basically. That's not that far away. Oh my God.
Yeah. Apparently, there were a whole heap of children that went missing because there were children who were employed to work as chimney sweeps. So in the vaults, there were actually buildings above that had chimneys, and there were children that were employed to work as chimney sweeps. And when the vaults were used as businesses, these children had to work as chimney sweeps. And in 1992, a fireplace was uncovered in the vaults, and they found bones inside the fireplace of this boy that was aged between 7 and 12. And then I watched another video on YouTube where she said that another chimney that was uncovered, they found a shoe inside, because children would go up into the chimneys and they would get stuck, and the people that were employing them, it was like too much hassle to try and get them out, so they would just like light a fire and kill them.
Oh my God. That reminds me of this morning on my walk with Maggie. I was listening to a podcast there. I wanted to be prepared for today's video, today's podcast. And they were talking about, they had a boy go down to explore some of the old vaults, and they brought with him bagpipes so they could hear him as he went through the vaults, and they could kind of like follow his progress as he traveled. His playing the bagpipes, it wasn't a song, but like just blowing the horns would allow people above to know where he was. And they stopped hearing the bagpipes and they don't know what happened to him. So instead of going to fucking find them, they fucking sealed the vaults off.
I know.
They sealed him in. And that's what your story reminds me. I'm like, what is wrong with you? So they have like people hear bagpipes now, ever since
you
then.
Kids that moan that you don't get the latest Xbox game.
Seriously, you could be haunting vaults with your bagpipes.
Be stuck
in Edinburgh.
Chimney in Edinburgh.
Seriously, ungrateful bastards. Oh my gosh. But what is wrong with people? That reminds me of that. They're like, instead of saving them, go and finding him, they seal them.
We'll just cover it all up.
Seal it off, pretend that has never happened.
We'll put a band-aid on that thing. Yeah. We'll just like stick a band-aid on it.
Whoopsie daisies. Whatever. Dead kid, schmed kid. What? It's horrifying. It's horrifying.
I know. Humans are so macabre in those days.
Seriously. Can you imagine They're like, it's no social media. No worries. No one will ever know.
Nobody's taking a photo.
We'll just
and
go
posting it on
ahead and
Facebook.
block that entrance off and pretend this day never happened.
Except he's going to play his bagpipes for eternity, just to remind everyone.
Oh my God, it's horrifying.
I know.
Mm.
Oh my goodness. So they actually in the 1860s decided enough was enough. Like, this place is just
Fucked.
disgusting.
Yeah.
So they moved everyone out and they filled it with rubble. They filled them with rubble and they went unknown for 100 years. Nobody knew about them.
Mm.
And then in the 19th, so I heard two stories. So I'll tell you both. The first one I heard was there was a student living in a student flat who banged on his wall and thought, that sounds hollow. I wonder what's behind it. And then sledgehammered and found the vaults behind.
Oh my God. Are you serious? They really sealed them up and were like, no one will ever know we're not even talking about this. Shut up. No way.
Does that not remind you of, was there not something on TikTok like last year during the pandemic where some woman in a New York apartment like knocked through and found another apartment, the other side of her apartment or something? Like a whole hidden room?
I don't know that. I'm not aware of that. If that was
anyway,
a thing.
It reminds me of that. The other story, which is just as cool, was there was this rugby player who must have been like a rich, well-known rugby player because he owned a bar. His name was Norrie Rowan. Okay. And in the 1980s, he owned a bar in the vaults because some of the vaults were still open. They were bars. I think the ones a little bit further near street level. And he tapped a wall and found the vaults. And so...
And what did you say? There was 120 rooms?
Yeah.
So no one... God, isn't it so fucked up how weird it is? Like, you have social media where every breath is known to every man at all times. And can you imagine actually, truly having no one know about them for 100 years?
Like, did no one wonder what was behind those bits of bridge?
I know. And there wasn't in any old pamphlets or newspapers or any, I mean, they had things in print. You know what I mean?
I guess like it was all the dregs of society that lived there, so they weren't writing about it.
So maybe they knew, but they just were like, yeah, prostitutes were there, so we don't even care. Like, we're not going in there. Like, just like disregarded
that's a dark part of our history that we
and
don't
they're
want
just like, yeah. I mean, I'm sure somebody had to know about that.
Let's not remind anyone about Bagpipe Boy.
Let's not go there again. Yeah. Because we're trying to forget.
It's like a dark part of our history that we don't want to. Let's just concentrate on the castle and the Royal Mail and the cashmere shops.
Yes, which in their defense is good things to focus on. Okay, I have to open my door. I have texted 4 members of my family and I'm being ignored. No, we don't need to pause anything. I'm just going to open the door for Maggie.
Okay, I'll cut it out.
Let it fly. Just let it fly.
I'll cut that bit out.
I'm sorry. I wish some days that I lived alone and I didn't have three children.
Don't we all?
Who lives with me and a husband who is, I have no idea what doing what right now, but yeah, we're all here, but it's like I'm the only one here and awake. So I apologize.
I feel you.
Thank you for being so understanding.
I feel you.
I really appreciate it.
Can I tell you the cool thing about this rugby player? This rugby player actually helped this other rugby player who was Romanian escape the Romanian secret police
Wow.
in order to get political asylum just before the Romanian Revolution of 1989 by hiding him and escaping him through the vaults.
No way.
I know. Isn't
Wow.
that cool?
Yeah. Yeah. Except it was that poor Romanian kid like haunted by all the ghosts while he's like trying to
I
escape?
don't know. Like,
He's
I
like,
don't
"This
know
is
how long he had to
amazing."
spend in there.
Yeah,
Like,
I know.
you're gonna go and spend 3 weeks in this tunnel, and the guy
Yeah,
comes
with
out
all-
damaged for life.
Yeah. I'm like, is it good though? Like, I don't know.
Like,
'Cause
I'd rather take my chances
Yeah.
with the political aside
Yeah.
with the police in my
Yeah.
country. Thank
He's
you
like,
very
I'm good.
much."
I'll just die because it's better than me haunted in the vaults. Like, let me weigh that for a minute. see which one hurts the most. I'm just saying.
I know.
That is cool though. That is
Yeah.
cool.
So then this rugby player, who obviously wasn't playing rugby anymore because he had loads of time on his hands, because he then excavated the vaults with his son. And that's when they realized that people had actually lived in them. Nobody realized that people had lived in them before. And they found inside the excavations, they found toys and plates. And do you know what else they found? Which I thought was super cool.
Oh
They
God.
found all these oyster shells because apparently that's what the poor people ate in the 1800s.
It's like a reverse.
I
Like
know.
now it's like only rich people get to eat the oysters, and
I
then it
know.
was the poor people. Fascinating. That's fascinating.
know.
Wow. This is all stuff I've never heard of. With even
I
all
know.
of my tourist tours under my belt, I didn't know any of this. That's awesome.
It's absolutely, when you do like a deep dive, it's
Yeah,
so interesting.
it
I'd love
really
to go
is.
back now.
Oh,
I'd
so
really
good.
love to go back and annoy the tour guide by going, well, and did you
Mhm.
know?
Seriously.
Like,
I
giving her in bits of information that
Yeah.
I'm sure she knows already.
Yeah. Oh, I was obsessed with our tour guide. When I did that tour with Ivy's retreat in 2017, our tour guide for 10 days traveled with us.
Oh, she was
like,
amazing.
She was, amazing. And I'm like, I was like weirdly obsessed with her because I was like, how do you, I feel like no one else cared. And I was like, how do you retain, number one, retain all this information? Number two, retort it back in such a beautiful story like manner, right? Number three, you have to put up with annoying fucking American tourists like myself who are like, will you come and live with me? Like, I love you so much. But yeah, I mean, just to be
our tour guide, I have to say, she was really cool. I would have loved to have gone for a drink with her afterwards and like chat with her. Me and her did have a little bit of a conversation in between venues about the fairy coffins, because I'd been to see them at the National Museum, and we were like talking theories, and it was so cool to speak to somebody that knew about them.
Yes.
But that's the only chance I got to speak to her like one-on-one, because I wasn't going to hug her. That wasn't fair.
And they're working. And
I wasn't going to be like, time. I have a podcast.
I'm not even a tourist. I live here all the time. So, that makes me special.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure people do that. Yeah.
I didn't do that, but I would have loved to have sat and chatted with her. It would have been super cool to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
But
so do you have the haunty stories about
I
this?
do. So let's move on to the paranormal stories. As you believe, there are loads because of the history of the place. If you have, apparently it's supposed to be the most haunted place in Edinburgh, but actually I've got a funny feeling one of the most haunted places in Scotland, but I might be wrong.
I don't doubt it for a heartbeat. You have like, it's like a century of hardship.
So we have had various paranormal investigators make their way to the vaults, including Ghost Adventures with Zach Baggins, who is always over the top. And also Most Haunted, which is the UK version of Ghost Adventures, equally over the top, has done two visits there. One in 2003, and then again they did a Halloween special in 2006. And of course, there is a whole heap of different things that have been reported, and Most Haunted are so well known for having things thrown at them when they're on their vigils, and that is one of the things that has been reported. Now, the third paranormal famous investigator, this is what I'm getting to, where I'm going to send you a video link at the end of this, and you're going to tell me what you think, Karen.
Okay.
Now, this is going to mean nothing to you because you're from the US, but this was from a TV show called Joe Swash Believes in Ghosts.
Okay. Can I look? I have my phone with me. Like, can I pause it and watch it?
Not right now, because
Okay.
wait until we get to it. But
okay.
You don't know who Joe Swash is. Joe
I don't.
Swash is like this guy that used to be in a soap opera called EastEnders. And he's like just one of these like cheesy, I shouldn't say that. Joe Swash, if you're listening, you're, I'm sure
Love
you're a
you.
cool
We
enough
have
guy.
literally 4 listeners, so it's fine. Go ahead.
But he does like loads of reality type shows, and this. But I watched it and it was actually quite good.
Was it?
It was a show called Joe Swash Believes in Ghosts, and he like investigated into ghosts. And one of the things that he did was a trip to the Edinburgh Vaults, where he stayed overnight, and he actually fucking slept there he didn't sleep. He sat in the vault on his own for
no way
4 hours or 6 hours. I would have been frigging terrified.
There's no way.
Do you want to pause it now, and I'll send you the link to the thing that I saw?
Yeah.
Okay, let's pause.
Okay. Okay. What did we push again?
3, 2, 1.
What do I push?
Record. Pause.
Oh, okay. Sorry, you're gonna have to line those up again.
I know, it's okay. So what I sent Karen is part of this TV show that's called Joe Swash Believes in Ghosts, which sounds like the cheesiest TV show in the world. And to some extent it was a little bit cheesy because of it's not like a serious show. But oh my frigging god, the last episode, so he goes to the Edinburgh Vaults and he spends a whole night there. He actually gives in about 4 or 5 hours into it. He just radios his people and is like, get me out of here, I can't stay any longer, I'm too freaked out.
Oh really?
He's on his own inside the vault.
There is no way.
And at the time he didn't hear anything, and then when they play back the recording of him being in the room, you can hear someone talking in the background, and it is
okay. It's 20 minutes.
So freaky.
It's not like a second. It's 20 minutes.
I know.
20 minutes.
And it sounds like a person is just sort of
like
mumbling almost or chanting. And he was there. You could hear the noise of the nightclub in the beginning part of when he was there, but they do compare it with that noise, and they realize that it can't be anything to do with that. And then those noises peter out because he was there at like 4 or 5 in the morning, and there was nothing else there, and it's just the scariest thing ever. So did I freak you out, Karen?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's not okay.
Do you want me to scare you even more by telling you about the particular ghosts that are to be found in the vault?
Wait a second. First of all, You can't just scar me for life and then just scoot on and change the subject right afterwards. So we'll have I hate you a little bit right now. And I'll put that on the blog, although I will never personally revisit that again. So yeah. So basically what I just watched was the footage of him is sitting in the dark, listening to nothing. Then they have people simultaneously doing an audio recording of that same space that he is in, and they're picking up something completely different than what he is hearing. So he's hearing nothing except for the sound of the club overhead. And what the audio picks up is a super distinct sound of someone chanting for 20 fucking minutes.
It's like an old man talking.
Which is louder than the club over. And then at the end, there's a child's voice that they also hear, none of which is actually picked up by his human ears. So that's fucked up on like
spooky.
11 different layers of like fucked up. So, and then Lucy also at the end of that, like a grand finale, sends me a fucking picture like, oh, that's just a ghost. So hang on. So where is this photograph from?
So
what am I looking at?
That is a photograph of the most famous ghost from the vaults, and his name is Mr. Boots.
I was just going to ask you if it was Mr. Boots.
Yeah. And his other name is the Watcher. So he's the Watcher, aka Mr. Boots. He's the most famous ghost from the vaults.
Yeah.
So apparently Mr. Boots is a man who wears like a dark hat.
See him clear as day now.
Shiny boots, and they don't know who he was. Some people think that he was a slum landlord, although how anyone could have charged rent to stay in these vaults is beyond me. Some people thought that he had the job of lighting the candles in the passages. Some people thought he was possibly a smuggler or a thief or even a body snatcher, which actually kind of covers all bases of every single thing that could have been in these vaults. So that's a kind of a pointless exercise.
Yeah, agreed.
It is thought that he possibly could have murdered somebody and kept the body hidden in the vaults. Some people said that somebody could have been a prostitute, but nobody really knows. Anyway, there is reports of this man where they can hear footsteps. Footsteps can be heard throughout the vaults. Apparently he's known to attack people and shout, "Get out!" at them. And some visitors report getting marks on their bodies after visiting the vaults and being touched by him. And this is a photograph that somebody took of their person they were visiting the vaults with, standing in the doorway. And you can see, we'll maybe put this up on our Instagram. I'm sure the person won't mind because it's freely available on Google. That you can see actually the shadow of a person with like a long black cloak standing in the corridor behind this person. And it's
well, it's funny, when you first sent that to me, all I saw was the green light and I was like, what the fuck is this? And I didn't see the person, but as you were chatting, I just kind of let my eyes like relax on the photo. Also have had lots of whiskey, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I see the guy clear as day now. Like I see the coat, I see his face, I see his boots, like for sure. And it's just like back to back with that other modern person with a thick wall between them, and I can totally see it. So okay.
Sorry if I give you nightmares, Karen.
No, I just don't know how I ended up in this freaky place because I hate this stuff.
I don't know how I ended up in this podcast. How did I end up in this podcast?
I'm trying to talk about fairies, and we can't escape the ghosts. Although I do at least finally.
It's fun. It is fun.
It is.
Really and it is Halloween month, so we have to be a bit spooky for Halloween month.
That is true. That is true. And I have not much else going on, so it's fine. But
it's still the middle of the afternoon for you, so you've still got plenty of hours to redeem yourself before you go to bed.
It's
But it's
6
11
p.m.
p.m.
Yeah,
I have to go to bed soon.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be thinking of these scary ass ghosts.
I know.
So spare a thought for me.
I am. I don't know.
Even though I'm the one telling the stories.
I know.
So do you want to hear some of the other stories
from
the vault?
You might as well. I'm already scarred for life, so just pile it on top.
For life.
Mm-hmm.
Although I have to say that Joe Swash believes in ghosts video, which I thought would be the most ridiculous because it's Joe Swash. If anyone's from the UK, they know who that is. Yeah. That's the one that freaked me out the most.
Yeah. Because it's also the reaction of the sound, like the sound engineer who's the one picking it up. He's so genuinely like horrified. You know what I mean? And that I always say that to Sean when I listen to. I've been really into the Sasquatch Chronicles podcast lately, and I always tell him he thinks I'm fucking crazy, but I'm always like, I think that's what gets me. It's not the stories. It's the fact that like these people that have sightings of fairies and Sasquatch and all this shit and all these ghosts, nobody wants this stuff. These people aren't here because they were seeking it. They're here and they hate it. They're like, that's how you know that they're telling the truth. You know what I mean? Like no one's asking for this. No one's out there looking. They're like, no, it ruined my vacation, or like, you know what I mean? Like no one, all of these witnesses are not, I feel like a crazy person. Like I don't want my kids to hear me, but like they're not welcoming this shit into their lives. It's like happening against their will and their wishes, and it's not like a fun, you know, and that's what's so horrifying and what's so real about it, you know.
I'm really scarring you for life.
I was already pre-scarred, but so that's what. But so you might have layered on.
I know there's a bunch of ghosts in the vaults, and they've all got funny names. There's one, and there's not a whole heap of information. It was kind of hard to find actual firsthand accounts of these. When you Google initially, you find all the tourist sites that sell the ghost tours and they tell the stories, and it's a little bit hard to get past them. Mm-hmm. There is a ghost apparently called the Aristocrat, and he is another gentleman who wears a tall black hat and a beard, and he is seen leaning against a wall with his arms folded. This is a bit spooky, watching and grinning at people, which is a little bit I don't like the idea.
Like, what are you smiling about?
I know. Apparently there's a cobbler, which is a ghost of a shoemaker from the 18th century who wears a leather apron and a white shirt, and he smiles at people when they pass by, or he stands in a corner and watches them. But he is not supposed to be an evil spirit as such, but more just like a residue of a person that was there. There's also supposed to be a child, and this child is supposedly called Jack, and he was a small boy that was aged about 6 or 7, and he wears a blue suit with knickerbockers. I love that word.
I know, I
knickerbockers.
Knickerbockers.
And he has blonde curly hair, although I am super surprised that a ghost has that much detail in like the color of their hair, but supposedly he does.
I'm not surprised.
And he's been known to be a little bit mischievous or mischievous. I don't know how you say that word, but he'll tug on people's clothes and he'll hold their hands. So imagine you go on a ghost tour and you stand in the vault, like we went, you stood in the vault in a circle in the dark, all the lights were off. Can you imagine suddenly you feel someone holding your hand?
No.
And it's not an actual person. It's this child.
No, I know. I listened to a podcast this morning because you said you were going to do something on a vault, and there was a podcast, and the story somebody had written into this podcast host. She was a tour guide for the vaults ghost tours.
Uh-huh.
And it was about, I forget what country that the mom was there with her 6 or 7-year-old daughter. And the tour guide was saying like, hey, this is not appropriate for kids. This is actually can be really scary. I don't think this is appropriate. I don't think you should attend. And the mom was like adamant. She was like, no, I'm bringing my daughter. We're here to do this. Like, it's fine. It's fine. And so the tour guide was like, okay, fine. But like, consider yourself warned. So they went into the tour and they got to the part where they turn off all the lights to like demonstrate how pitch black it was, because there's no window, right? You're underground. There's no windows, there's no door. It's like completely pitch black. So there was 2 tour guides. There was their little tour that they were with. They did this on the tour that I was on too. So they turn off the lights so they can show you, like, demonstrate. Well. Yeah. So they turn off everything. And while the torches were off or the flashlights were off, the mom started screaming bloody murder. And she was like, oh my God. So of course, right away, everybody like, right, it takes them like a second, but they turn the torches or flashlights back on. And they're like, oh my God, what is wrong? And she's like, my daughter is gone. Like my daughter is not here. And they're like, what the fuck? What do you mean? Like, where did she go? So they, got the lights back on. They found the daughter. She was like in a different room nearby,
oh my God, that's so freaky.
Facing a wall.
So
I know. It's like modern. I know. And they were like, and the mom was like, what are you doing? Like, why did you leave the group? You know what I mean? And she was like, no, because someone, I was led by the hand over here to go stand on here. And the mom was like, yeah, but it wasn't me. I didn't lead you by the hand. I was standing right there the whole time with the group. And the daughter goes, yeah, I know it wasn't you because your hand doesn't have claws on it.
Oh, I don't like that at all. Like, that is a little bit.
The fuck?
No, Karen. Are you getting me back for the noise of the thing on the tape?
That's the kind of shit you have me listening to now.
Oh my God, I don't
on my lovely morning walks with my dog. I know. What's that about? Like a new level of. Next week let's talk about Will-o'-the-Wisps and like something like Disney fairies, like
Tinkerbell.
Yes, let's have a whole episode. But
although it's still October next week, and I feel like it should be a whole spooky season. I feel like we should be doing ghost days between now and Halloween.
I know, more witches. I'm sorry. I had to interrupt with that story, but it was just today that I heard that.
No, oh my God. Well, I listened to another podcast that spoke a lot about the vaults. This is a really good one. It's called the Edge of Darkness podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And in that one, they interviewed one of the tour guides from the vaults who had some experiences himself.
Mm-hmm.
And he spoke about seeing the spirit of this young woman. And he had actually experienced this himself. This woman is seen standing in the corridor, and she has long dark hair and blood on her face. And apparently the story goes that this woman had gone down into the vaults because she'd been lured there, but she was supposed to be meeting a man. But then when she got there, she was set upon by a whole group of men and murdered.
Oh, God.
And nobody was actually prosecuted for her murder because there were too many people involved. And so not one person could get the blame.
Great.
And then, similar to your story, in more recent times, there was a small boy who was on a tour. And he went and sat on the steps and started talking, and his mom or whatever asked him who he was talking to, and he said he was talking to the woman on the steps. And he said the men had been bad to the lady and that she was stopped on the stairs and beaten up. And he was basically talking to the ghost of this woman. And the woman is a true story. Apparently it was a woman called Elizabeth Ann Morrison who was killed in 1797, and she was found beaten with her skull in over 6 pieces, and her body was taken afterwards to the university and sold like for anatomy.
Yeah. God.
And this little boy was talking to the ghost of the woman that was beaten on the steps. I know. Sorry to freak you out even more.
Yeah. Yeah. I listened after you sent me that, not that specific episode, but you said, hey, these guys are really good. I listened to another episode from that podcast, and yeah, that's shit's no joke. Because they're interviewing them, they're like, that's like a different level of scary that I'm not quite comfortable with, though. You know,
just don't listen at bedtime. You can listen to us at bedtime because you know that we're full of shit, but
and we're just as scared as you are, so we're safe.
Don't listen to them at bedtime.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
So to finish off my information on the vaults, because I think we've probably like scared ourselves shitless by now, and we've had enough. There's a whole witch element, which is super interesting as well. Yeah, so actually, when I was on my vaults tour, the little part of the vaults that I was in, there was a Wiccan altar set up, which I took photos of, which I think I sent to you.
Is that the one with the people around it, with the not the picture before your background right now? With okay.
Kind of.
Okay.
We're getting there.
Okay.
That's also involved.
Okay.
So these Wiccans, which they're obviously good witches, they moved into the vaults. This was like in the 90s, I think.
Oh, damn.
And they decided that they were going to try and like clear some of the energy. And the first room that they went to was this room where it just turned out to be not a good room. There was a really bad energy. They unwittingly opened this portal, apparently, and they had to close it by building this stone circle and doing rituals to trap whatever was there in the room inside the stone circle. So when we were visiting, and that was a photo that you saw, when we were visiting, we were told to enter that stone circle at your own peril. People had been known to faint, have heart attacks, all kinds of horrible things inside the stone circle. Do you think I went inside? No way.
Good girl. Good girl. I'm glad
there was no way I was going in there. I'm not gonna risk that.
Hell no. Yeah.
I'm playing with fire.
Seriously.
So they then moved further down the corridor to another room in the vaults, but they found out that initial room where the stone circle is was actually in the vicinity of where this guy called Lord Nicol Edwards, he was actually, I think, the Lord Provost of Edinburgh at the time of King James VI. He had been one of the vehement witchcraft hunters. He had interrogated people accused of witchcraft in that actual area.
Wow.
There is a bar, which I think is just above it. Now, I might have my facts a little bit wrong in terms of where things are, but it's all in the same area. There's a bar called the Banshee Labyrinth.
Wow.
And that was where he had lived, and he had taken part. So obviously this is before the vaults had been built, because King James VI is from a much earlier time, but it's all within this area. This area is infused with this. He had tortured all these witches, and then these modern day witches had come back and had moved into that area and had experienced that stuff. yeah, and this Banshee Labyrinth Pub is apparently super haunted as well. It's
Wow.
part of the vaults. It's like kind of more street level, but it's part
okay.
of that same,
Yeah.
same part of the vaults. And apparently there's a banshee type figure in that area who has been seen wailing and then purporting people's death afterwards. And so these witches, they quickly moved out of that bad room, which had bad connotations, which had obviously come from the whole witchcraft interrogation times, even though they had been there before the vaults had been built. And then they moved down just a few rooms down into another vault. Niddry Street, which is where these vaults are, were very well known for the witchcraft trials in the 16th and 17th century. Apparently, there was a very famous witch called Agnes Finney, who is supposed to have cursed the whole street. She was put to death. She was burnt at the stake. She was accused of 20 counts of witchcraft, and she, including cursing a boy who became paralyzed and died 2 days after. But of course, that is just could be made up by whoever wanted her killed.
Right.
So these Wiccans, their coven is called the Source Coven of the Blue Dragon, and they moved into this other room, and I'll put photos on our Instagram. You can see that whole room is still set up like a Wiccan coven with pentagrams and various different things in the room to try to, I think, clear some of the evilness out of the area and put goodness back in. But then also the Wiccans couldn't handle it anymore, and they all moved out in the mid-90s. So they just left it. It's all sitting there, and they moved out.
That does not speak well of the energy that is there.
I know. Apparently there are some spooky photos in the Edge of Darkness podcast. They kept, the only thing that was slightly frustrating to me was that they were sometimes talking about photos, but there was no links to the photos, so I couldn't, and I tried Googling and I couldn't find them. Apparently there is a photo taken of that Wiccan Coven vault room that's got paranormal stuff in it in the photo, but I couldn't find that photo anywhere, unfortunately. If anyone else finds it, please put me in the direction of that photo, because I'd like to see. But yeah, so that is probably pretty much it on the vaults in Edinburgh. Have I sufficiently spooked you, Karen?
Yes, you have. Yes. It's interesting. It must be different than the tenements that I have toured, which also have ghosts, because those were not filled with the like prostitutes and the the kind of devious bad side of society. Those were like families who were poor that lived in there, or two families, or they had 10 kids and they were all kind of shoved in one room, like different more sadder stories, and less kind of evil bents, but still haunted and still spooky.
I think there was a mix in the vaults, to be honest. I think there were poor families in there as well.
Yeah, but the vault sounds more like tumultuous. There was like a much more darker, evil, edgier bent to those stories and the histories, as well as the hauntings that go with them. So it must have been what I toured when I was in my 20s versus the later tours, because I was scared shitless. Like that stayed with me forever, like really a long time. I was like really affected by those stories. So that must have been what I had toured, because it really scared the shit out of me.
I think I'm going to be having slightly freaked out dreams.
You need to go watch like Bambi. You need to go watch
chanting
Bambi or something. Yeah. That stuff just
sticks. I'm going to go and watch something really cheesy on TV before I go to sleep.
You really do. Something rated G, made for children. Yeah, like My Little Pony or like a little cartoon. Like, I know. I wish I could send you something right now that would like do that for you or some.
I'm sorry for sending you that spooky video.
Yeah, that is. I think it is when you kind of cross a line when you go from imaginary to like, do I believe it to not believe it, right? To when you start giving me like facts, like an auditory recording of something or a photograph of something. No, I just wonder how I'm going to be when I actually go back to Scotland, go hang out in castles. I wonder if
especially since our castle is haunted.
Well, I just wonder if I'm going to be braver because I'm equipped with more, I feel like, experience and knowledge, or the flip where I'm going to be completely freaked out because now I know that this shit is real. So I'm going to be extra, I feel like it's going to be like one way or the other.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Only time will tell.
What do you think? How do you think you're going to be? Are you going to be more freaked out or more scared? I mean, that's the same. More freaked out, or you feel more confident because you like kind of can wrap your brain around more of it because we've sort of studied it more. What do you think?
I think it depends how much whiskey is in my system.
There is that.
Yeah.
We're also not staying there ourselves, which is better. But every time I had to pee, last time I was there, I would run. I would run there, and I kind of wanted to leave the door open a little so I could, like, I didn't want to be trapped in the bathroom with anyone. And then I would run back downstairs. And
Don't look in the mirror.
I was gonna say,
look in the mirror.
I was terrified of the mirror the whole entire time. Yeah, that scares me. Why are there so many mirrors in that one bathroom?
I know.
It's not okay.
Our castle that we stay in when we do our art retreats.
Yeah.
Ward Hill.
And there's the big mirror in the spooky hallways as well. Whose idea was that to put mirrors in there? That's like a fun house trick. It's like not funny either.
I know.
You're like, no.
Are you going to choose something spooky for next week, seeing as it's still Halloween month? I'm
going to talk about dragons.
Oh, that's not so spooky. But it's a nice taster refresher. I might do something spooky the following week.
Yeah, you can continue on your spooky spell, and I'm going to break the spell. I need a hiatus of a week. Well, actually, we'll see. No, but I really am looking into dragons because I've been doing dragons for the Celtic Collective Art Club. And if you're going to continue haunting me with these crazy stories, then I will let you go down that road, and I'm going to take a lighter dragon road.
You know that I told everyone that I chatted to at the top of Arthur's Seat, because I do like to chat to random people.
Yes.
That it was a sleeping dragon. I was like, you do know this is a sleeping dragon, and they all looked at me like I was like a little bit crazy.
My God.
And I was like, off my rocker, let's cart her off to the loony bin.
Right.
She doesn't know what she's talking about.
But you did. We knew.
Yeah. I felt like I had to pass on that little nugget of wisdom.
Awesome. Wink, wink. Like, yes, of course it is. Just agree with the crazy lady. Just agree with her. We'll be down soon. No, I am excited. Well, I think that's enough. That's enough of a sneak peek what's coming. Well, it's been almost 2 hours. That's the way we roll. No matter how hard we try to keep it short, we literally can't. But no, you took me on a trip, so I really enjoyed that. And even though it scared the shit out of me, but I love you.
Welcome.
Yeah, there you go. You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Yeah. And that note, we'll be coming with something less sorted next week. And then, we'll be back for more. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you then. Bye.
Bye.